Good morning. Good morning. I'm Karine. This is my daughter, Lucia. She's going to do the first sentence of the introduction.
Good morning. For today's session, you will hear about how the North Carolina Council of Churches has created a network of faith leaders working together as a part of the NC Bail Reform Working Group.
So today we hope to provide you with an overview of the injustices that the for-profit cash bail system in North Carolina perpetuates, an update on where the reform stands with the North Carolina legislator and why, and suggestions for how faith-based organizations can offer support. So we're very fortunate today to have our session leader, Peter Van Dorsten, now retired. Peter worked for IBM for 42 years in various sales, management, consulting, project management, and business processes reengineering capacities. He is now working with the North Carolina Interfaith Cash Bail Reform Committee to enlist the support of religious groups from across the state to advocate for replacing for-profit cash bail with fair, just, safe, effective, and less costly alternatives to pretrial detention. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming today. So, let's see. So I've been told when I speak up, I can project very well. The problem is that I trail off, and then so just keep me honest. Yeah, that's all right. I'll try to speak loud. Thank you. Okay, so cash bail. Let me ask a question before I get started. A lot of people don't understand the difference between jail and prison. So by show of hands, do you understand the difference between jail and prison? Pretty good, pretty good. All right, well, just for those who aren't sure, prison is where you go after you're convicted of a crime. Jail typically is where you go while you're waiting for trial, or maybe after trial for a little while you're waiting to be sentenced, or in some cases, for other reasons. So for instance, I did a little data poll from the Greensboro jails, and one segment of the population right now, in terms of their status, just has immigration. So you have 7 people in your jails on January 5th that are there because of immigration issues. So there's a range of reasons why people are in jail. But for the most part, people in jail are waiting to be tried. And that's why this little logo over here, you might not be able to see it in the back, to net out our issue, you're jailed until proven wealthy. Because if you don't have enough money to pay the bail to get out of jail, you're stuck until your trial date. And that's the injustice that we're trying to address. That's the immorality. So thank you for including me in your summer series. I know you've got an immigration talk coming and a talk on LGBTQIA, and both of those populations are absolutely affected by what we do with bail and how we treat people. So let's see if I can get this to work. I think I have to. Oh, and the other thing, there are brochures in the back, and everything I'm going to tell you today, and there's more information on these slides than I'm going to be able to spend time with you today. But everything on these slides is available. And the brochure has a way to get to it. So we have a Google folder. And also, if you go to the North Carolina Council of Churches website, there's a whole section there on bail. Okay, so we're going to talk about why bail reform. We're going to talk about, you heard I work for IBM. I'm a data kind of person. I like data. There's not a tremendous amount of data available, but I've gotten some I can talk to you about. And then suggestions on next steps. And then I've got some Guilford County specifics that I've got into the presentation, but I got more at the end. I did a little research on the county before I came. All right, so what's the problem with basically, it's poor people who are locked up and who have no options to get out. And the reason, often they're unhoused, or they suffer from mental illness or addiction. And one of the real problems with the way our system works is these people just keep cycling through, and they're not getting the support that they need. So even when you look at the data from jails, you're not getting the full picture, because people can come in, come out, come in, come out. And that data is not really captured anyway. And the other thing about this is it's really rooted in our history of racism. If you go back in time, so for instance, if you owned slaves in Savannah, Georgia, and you had to go out of town, and you were in an urban environment, you had to go out of town, you could just park your slaves at the local jail for safekeeping until you came back. So it's deep in our culture. And of course, then there's Reconstruction and convict leases. It's a whole long list that we don't have time to get into today, but it really goes back to slavery in many, many ways. Jails have almost 19 times the number of annual admissions as prisons. So the population is much larger in jails than it is in prisons. And 3 out of 5 people have not been convicted of a crime who are in jail. Not been convicted. Nearly 75% of those people are there for nonviolent, traffic, property, drug, low serious crimes. They're not there misdemeanor. And Black people are jailed at almost 4 times the rate of white Americans. And I've got some specific statistics on Guilford that I'll show you in a bit. So they're misused and they're overused, and they damage families and communities because you're taking people out of the community and causing all kinds of problems as a result. So the net of it is, the question here, is it really fair that people with money can walk and people without money are stuck? And if you think about it, it goes back to property, right? When the country was founded, who could vote? Property owning white men, right? Those are the people that have the rights. And even today, if you don't have property, you have fewer rights, right, in our system. So the Federal Reserve Bank did a study in 2019, and they looked at the population, and they discovered that 40%, almost 40%, 37% of the population, if presented with an unexpected $400 expense, had to go into debt to pay that. Many people could put on a credit card, but they couldn't pay it off immediately, right? The bottom 12% of the population, and this is nationwide, are unable to pay that expense by any means. So these are the people that are most affected, right? It's the people on the bottom, without income, without assets. In North Carolina, if you look at net worth of the population, the bottom 18% of the people in North Carolina have 0 or negative net worth. So they have nothing, they have no assets. And that's the population we're talking. Now, this is, and by the way, many of these slides, some of them I've taken directly, but some of them I've taken extracts. We have a wonderful facility in North Carolina as part of the UNC School of Government called the Criminal Justice Innovation Lab. And they've done studies, and they provide the data. Much of the data I'm going to show you comes from them. And in this case, almost all, so first of all, and you may not be able to see this in the back, so let me explain it. So the big pie circle here, right, is people who have been charged with a crime are not found, no finding of guilt 80.9% of the time. Right? No finding of guilt for lots of different reasons, no finding of guilt. 19% of the time, somebody's found guilty in our criminal justice system, but almost all of those are done through a plea deal. So if you're sitting in jail and you can't afford the bail, and the district attorney comes to you and says, if I got a deal for you, you plead guilty to something, you can go home. So it's a coercive power that's used. And it helps the DA, but it's not really helping the cause of justice. And 65% of the time, the cases are dismissed. So we have cases where somebody's arrested for a crime, they're in jail, they can't afford to get out, and the bail bond companies go after, whatever assets that person may have, right? So you can borrow money from the bail agent to pay the fee. They charge 10%, whatever the bail amount is. And then you can spend a long time paying that off. It's like payday loans, and it's high interest rate. And if you stop payment, you can be thrown back in jail. So the bail agent has tremendous coercive power to extract money from the people who are in this process. Now, the other thing I want to tell you about is our court system. So we have there are national standards that are set by an association. Nothing that you're legally required to meet, but on the far side here, the first column there is how fast can a misdemeanor be disposed of by the court, right? So the first column over there is you ought to be able to dispose some number of those within 60 days of being charged, right? So the national target is 75% of the time, you'd like the court system to be able to do that. In North Carolina, and this was in 2017 and 2018, we're down in the low 20s. So our court system, which has been underfunded for years, is very slow. And that is work. And the next one is 0 to 90 days, and the next one is 0 to 180 days. And July 5th, when I looked at your data, there's somebody in the jail who's been there for 1,300 days. All right? Not convicted of a crime. So, and the average time is 6 months. The average time is 6 months. And the other dynamic here with the court system is these are for these low-level crimes, you go to appear before the judge, right, for your court date, and the judge says, I'm sorry. Well, they don't say I'm sorry. They just basically say, look, we've got a crowded docket today. We don't have time for this case. You're going to get a continuance. You have to come back. So you're a poor person. You had trouble getting to the court anyway. Now you have to come back. It's not unusual to have to come back 5 and 6 times within that 6-month period. So it's just adding insult to injury. Now, again, this is data from the Criminal Justice Innovation Lab. If you look at criminal charges in North Carolina, 80% of the charges are for nonviolent misdemeanors. Right? We hear all this stuff, especially during political campaigns, about keeping, horrible criminals off the street. Serious violent felonies are 1.9% of the charges. So you really have the tail wagging the dog in terms of how our system is set up, right? So for most of the people coming through, and most of the people coming through in this nonviolent, if you're in that upper 60% of the income distribution, it's an inconvenience, right? Yeah, fine, I pay my fine or pay the lawyer to get me off or whatever. It's no big deal. But when you're at the bottom, then you're caught up here, and you can get it caught up for a long time. All right, so let's look at the top misdemeanors in North Carolina. What are the top misdemeanors? The number one is speeding, right? The next 4, these are all traffic-related crimes, misdemeanors. So speeding is number 1, and the next one is an expired registration or driving while your license has been revoked, not impaired. And that's a tricky one, because what happens there is if you get caught for speeding in North Carolina and you don't pay your fine, your license is automatically revoked. We were told that in Robeson County, 25% of the adults in Robeson County are in that situation, and they may not even know it. It's not unusual, right? And so if you get pulled over again, so you have a speeding misdemeanor, you haven't paid the fine. Now you have the second misdemeanor, driving while license revoked, plus whatever they pulled you over for. So very easily you have 3 misdemeanors, right? And if you get 5 misdemeanors of these very low level crimes, the class 3 misdemeanor, you get 5, then now you're eligible for jail time. And the next one, operator's license and operating vehicle with no insurance. And my assertion is that those 4 are all crimes of poverty, right? You can't afford insurance, you can't afford to get your car inspected or registered, or you've got some issue paying a fine, right? Now you're behind the 8 ball. And there's 300,000, according to the North Carolina Justice Center, there's 300,000 people in North Carolina who are in this situation, and most of them are people of color. So put yourself in the shoes of these people, right? Because I'm assuming we don't have a lot of people who are experiencing poverty in this room today. And most of the people I talk to, that's the case. So what becomes unaffordable, right? You have to make trade-offs, right? So you pay the fine, but you can't pay your insurance, or you can't pay your rent. You know, this is a spiral. It's a downward spiral, and we're adding pressure to that. And maybe you miss a court date because you can't get childcare, you can't get off from work, you can't get transportation. People miss their court dates about as much as people miss going to their dental appointment, right? So why do they miss, right? And well, this is directly from Criminal Justice Innovation Lab. 1 in 6 people, so 250,000 missed appearances in North Carolina per year. 82% of those are for traffic misdemeanors, right? And here's a gotcha, right? In some counties, and these are the smaller counties, this is not true of Guilford. The number one reason for jail admission is you missed your court date. Because if you miss a court date, that's a class 2 misdemeanor. That's a mandatory $1,000 bail, and it's jail time. So without too much trouble, you can trip right into this situation. So these are solvable issues. And the key is we don't treat this, we treat failure to appear. This is why we have bail, right? We have bail to ensure that you're going to show up for your court date. That's the whole purpose of bail, right? But we get confused because we do not distinguish between willful flight and somebody who just had a problem getting to court that day, which is the vast majority of cases. You know, you're not going to flee the country because, for a minor charge. So we don't distinguish that, and that's an issue. So I talked to you before about jails holding a lot more than prisons, the population, and you can see the growth in here since the last reform in the 90s. You can see the upper line there is the number of people in jail nationwide. You can see the dip, by the way, for the pandemic. Okay, and the number in prison. And where our prison population is actually going down because the population is aging, and crime is in general going down. But you can see that's where the real growth has been. Now, for misdemeanors, the trial judges, the district court judges in North Carolina are requiring bail for misdemeanors 68% of the time on average. Some counties, like Wake County, 85% of the time. Some counties are down in the 40%. It really varies. And one of the reasons we have so much variation is the way the system is set up. It's all county by county by county. So depending on where you are, you're going to have a different experience. Guilford, so if the state is 68, Guilford, when I looked at the data, and this is 2018 data, you're around 63%. So there's room for improvement in Guilford County. Because you really don't, this is not something that judges should do, but they do it because it's been normalized over many years. It's just the way the system's been working. I'm going to skip over a couple of things here. So now I want to talk about reform works. This is an example from Texas, Houston, Texas. And through a federal case, they had to change the way they did this because somebody appealed and went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the court said, no, this is unfair. You can't do this. Right? So they had to change. So they changed the way they do bail for misdemeanors. The arrests declined by 14% because now you don't have that coercive power of the DA, right? Fewer people were required to pay bail, and most the people jailed in misdemeanor cases went down from 85 to 14%. Right, so they made a real impact. on the number of people sitting in their jails for basically no reason. And so what does that mean to the community? That means thousands have been able to maintain their families, their housing, medical, all that stuff's much more stable. So it's, and fewer convictions, and the community has saved millions of dollars. Right, so there is a practical side of this that says, why spend in Guilford County, according to your latest county budget, you spend $100 a day on somebody sitting in jail. So if you don't need to house them in jail, you can save money. And now let's talk about the racial bias in the system, right? So in North Carolina, 22% of the population is Black, and they represent 41% of the people in jail. So, right, I mean, this is systemic. This is what systemic racism looks like. Now let's look at Guilford. So I went in, and by the way, in Guilford, 33% of the population is Black. So you have a higher population of Black people. But in Guilford, and I went on July 5th, I pulled data. And it's not easy to do this, believe me. They don't make it easy. Some counties in North America, in the US, they've got online dashboards. You can learn all kinds of things about the jail, who's there, why are they there, all kinds of measurements. That's not the case in North Carolina. Mecklenburg had something for a while, then they had a problem because, I don't know if you're familiar with the e-courts, but the court system is going through this horrendous change in technology, and so even Mecklenburg can't get the data anymore. But anyway, so the jail population for felonies is on the left, misdemeanors is on the right. Black is the blue color and white is the red. So you can see, right, that for felonies, you're 2.4 times more likely to be in jail on a felony if you're Black than if you're white. And white, by the way, includes Hispanic, Latino surnames. And on the right-hand side, that's misdemeanors. So you're 2.8 times more likely to be in jail if you're Black in Guilford County on July 5th. I just have the date for July. So that's the left side. And the right side is the bonds that people are being asked to pay. Right? So on the left side, again, is felony, and the right side is misdemeanor. So if you're accused of a felony, your bond, if you're white, is $20,000 on average. Your bond, if you're Black, is $50,000 on average. So that's quite a disparity. And on misdemeanors, your bond, if you're white or Hispanic, is $2,250, and your average bond for if you're Black is $6,600. So this is a snapshot of data for one day. And so what do you do with data like this? My suggestion is you go ask people. You say, look, we're looking at the data. Why is this the case? District court judge, county district attorney, ask the question. Because believe me, they're not hearing from anybody else. That's why I'm here, to try to get more people to engage with their local officials. And here's disparity, racial disparities in detention. So remember we talked about failure to appear and the problem? You have 1,000, your jail on July 5th, you had 1,000 people in jail. 200 of those people were there because they had failed to appear for a court date. So the upper part of this, right, you can see that the racial disparity for females is not bad. The racial disparity for Black males versus white, 114 Black, 43 white. Okay, and you can just see from the graph here, right, failure to appear is affecting Black people much more than white skin. So again, I'm putting this out there as a way to say, empower you to be able to ask questions in your own county about what's going on and why. And my experience, I'm from Raleigh, and I started with Wake, right? So we started asking these questions, and they've started in the latest committee meeting for public safety. They said, the public's been interested in this topic, and we need to do some things. And let's put in a text messaging service, because most counties in North Carolina do not have a text messaging service to help people like your dentist does, to help people get to jail. Why don't we do that? And maybe we should get a deep dive and we'll get the UNC School of Government to help us and let's go get some more data and understand this problem. So, just by asking questions, good things can happen. All right, so many people end up cycling in and out of jail. But let's talk about the industry now that benefits from all this, right? Because people are making a lot of money. So here, these are bail agents are really insurance agents. They're backed by insurance companies. So when you go and you get charged with crime and you want to bond out, right? And about a third of people bond out immediately. They give you a big book. And I wasn't able to get it for Guilford because the data wasn't available last time I looked. But in Wake County, which is a population of about 1 million, so 1.2 million, guess how many bail agents there are? 1,724. It's a good business. You can make a lot of money as a bail. It's a very competitive business. But they're backed by insurance companies. So you pay a 10% fee, a minimum 10% fee, and the bail agent is the one who decides whether you're a good creditor. So you don't get out of jail unless you pass muster with the bail agent, which is one of the reasons the American Bar Association hates the system, because it's not the judge making the decision who's in jail and who's not, it's the bail agent. So anyway, the insurance company gets a 10% cut of the fee that the bail agent charges you. Right? And that's a non-refundable fee. You don't get that money back. So we have a CEO who was bragging to his, if you're in the insurance business, most insurance segments have to have a provision for losses, right? You have to have set some amount of money aside so that if you lose, so in our case, in bail, if somebody skips and they have to forfeit the bail, right, then the insurance, they're on the hook to pay for that. Well, we have a CEO bragging, right, that in the last 17 years, they've had 0 losses. And that's because there are the losses are very rare. In fact, in North Carolina, it's been so well engineered because of the lobbying that's been done with our legislature. The first thing that happens if a bail agent's on the hook to have to forfeit a bail because somebody didn't show, the first thing they do is they don't immediately pay that. They wait to be sued by the state. And then they'll pay it if they lose the suit. But that's just a delaying tactic because the way the statute's written, if that person is, brought in, then they're off the hook. They don't know anything. So there's no way that a bail company is going to lose money with this. And that's why it's such a good business. And it's such a good business that in some states, there are charitable bond funds. In fact, we have one here in Guilford County, and I invited Terry Flam Goldberg to just raise your hand, Terry. She's the person, if you wanted to support something in Guilford, to contact. And I think we've got some brochures in the back. Okay. All right, so just file that away for the moment. But so these charitable bond funds, basically, they will advance the bail. They'll pay the full bail amount. They're not taking any fees for somebody, right? And then when that person shows up, then they get that amount back. Well, the bail companies have something called the American Bail Coalition, and the insurance companies don't like this, right? They're losing business because of these charitable bond funds. So now through ALEC, everybody know who ALEC is? What ALEC is? So it's basically a group that helps conservative causes craft legislation. They create model legislation. So they're working with these companies to try to prohibit charitable bond funds because it's eating into their business. That hasn't come to North Carolina yet. All right, so let me sum up here. What am I doing? All right, so we're increasing desperation. You really think about this. This system is increasing desperation in the poorest homes. And as a result, it's increasing, it actually increases crime. studies have been done. The bail industry will say, "Oh, isn't this great? We're keeping criminals off the streets. We're taking care of this for you, and it doesn't cost you a cent," which is all wrong. But what actually happens is the people who can't find out because of desperation. If you plead guilty to a crime now, try keeping a job, right? So we're increasing desperation of the community, and that actually leads to increased crime because it's harder for people to support themselves and their families when they've just been pounded down. It's another toll on the road to Jericho, right? 50%, at least 50% of the detainees are charged with low-level crimes, and we're raising the cost of detention because we have to house these people at $100 a day. We can do things like use summons or citations, right, instead of putting somebody in jail. But that's a police option, right? And some counties in North Carolina have started doing that, which is good. And you can't eliminate or minimize bail and do nothing else. You have to both reduce bail and increase the support programs like texting services, transportation to make sure people get to court, mental health and addiction services. That's where really our attention and focus and money should be. That's the real problem. So, and the places that have done that, like Illinois is another recent example where they've eliminated bail. They've done that, and their reports from Illinois are terrific. And this average cost for North Carolina, that's a 2015 number. So at $100 a day, that's really more like $36,000 a year for Guilford. All right, and it doesn't work because people show up for trial anyway. Even if you didn't have bail, almost all the people show up. This is why charitable bail groups can exist, because they don't have the losses either, right? They're limited by how much money they can raise, right? And how many people they can help. And we already said that insurance companies, it's a good business for the insurance companies. The US and the Philippines are the only countries in the world who have a for-profit cash bail system, where we have private companies making money. Right? And the US military doesn't use it. That's a completely different type of system. So what does reform look like? Okay, smaller jails, more support services, relief from desperation, and that allows people to essentially keep their lives together while they're going through the process of determining whether they're actually guilty. So now I want to turn to, if I've caught your attention and you might want to do something about it, what could you do, right? So one of the things you could do is find your allies, educate people, and that's what we're doing here today. And I'm happy to come back and talk to whoever wants me to come back. And I mentioned this before, start a conversation with people in power. It can just be a conversation. It can just be asking people, help me understand why our system works this way. And my experience is all the people that you could talk, they're more than happy to talk to. They're more than happy to explain it. And you start asking questions, like we sat down with the district attorney in Wake County, and we said, well, can you tell me how many people who are in jail today only because they can't afford bail? So I don't know. I don't have that data. I have no idea. So, and those, you start asking questions, and then that's a good question. We should answer that. Because then we said, well, the School of Government's got a wonderful resource. Have you thought about partnering with them? Later on, they did, right? We're asking district court judges, why is it taking 6 months to get through these minor cases? What could be done, right? What help do you need? And so eliminating bail is one option, but there's other options like texting service. You can eliminate without changing the law, which in North Carolina is going to be tough because the Republican legislature is not going to do that. We have in North Carolina, Up until last year, there were 3 people in the House that were former judges. They've been submitting legislation, and they're all Democrats. They're arguably the people with the most experience of this system. They could not get, for the last 3 years, they could not get anyone on the other side of the House to support the legislation, even for just a study. Let's just do a study. You couldn't get it, make it happen. So in the current legislative session, the current legislative session, there's no legislation. They basically gave up. But starting conversation, advocating for care, publicizing this, and doing things like engaging in participatory defense or court watching. And Mary Nell is here. Mary Nell, raise your hand. So Mary Nell is here, and both Terry and Mary Nell, by the way, are from Greensboro. I invited them to come here today because I wanted to have that connection. Right? Mary Nell can talk to you about what's being done in Greensboro for court watching. And the benefit of court watching is, first of all, the district court judges over time recognize that somebody's actually watching and paying attention. Right? And secondly, the participatory defense, so the next step is the judges, they're so backed. If you ever go and watch a court, sit for a day and watch what happens, it's like an assembly line. They're trying to ram people through there as fast as they possibly can because they got such a backlog. So the more information that they have to make good decisions, the better. So what participatory defense says is people in the community team up with the public defender's office and help them get the information to tell the judge, this person has this support in the community. We can vouch for it. You can bring people in, you can marshal data. So there's things that can be done to help that too. So just start with education. That's what I'm trying to do today. All right. And so what we're suggesting, because I mentioned the legislature is kind of a lost cause at the moment, is this is a topic, if you think about it, we've normalized cruelty in our society with this system, right? We've absolutely normalized it. So talking to the local people about the problem and what can be done, and some of them have pretty good ideas about need help, they need community support, right? Starting with your chief district court chief justice, ask them, right? We have a conversation guide in our Google folder to help step you through the kinds of questions you can ask, right? And I've given you some data, and I'm happy to give you whatever I have to help with that process. Or the district attorney, right? Or the county sheriff. To start asking people, tell me about you. Why, this is unjust. Why can't we do better? What could we do better as a county? They'll have ideas. They may be able to explain it, and you can have an impact just by talking. And county commissioners. It's so interesting. One of the things I learned going to the county commissioners is, they fund stuff, right? But when I asked them, I said, look, the county jail in Wake County went out and contracted with a firm that designs and builds jails, right? And the recommendation that they brought forward said, oh, you need a new jail. And you need to expand your jail. I said, and you all are funding this. It's part of your due diligence. Don't you need to ask some questions? And their response is, well, we have to rely on it's these towers that are not integrated in the way our government works. So, they are reluctant to call into question what the sheriff is recommending, right? And so anyway, that's something that we're continuing to argue with them about, or not argue, maybe that's too strong, to help talk about what other things they might do. And one of the things we did is we bookmarked the county. We benchmarked the county, other counties across the country who have lower jail populations, who have more poverty, right? And who have done a better job, right? They have smaller jails. So why is this county expanding jails? Other counties across the country haven't needed to do that. So they're being better stewards of tax dollars. So we get their attention. All right. We talked about the charitable bond fund. You know about Terry. There's other organizations to help resolve traffic debt, get driver's licenses back. We talked about participatory defense. That's a link there. And we've got so much information. We've got too much information, Bob. We have a ton of information, including videos, which we didn't have time. We have a nice little video that church in Raleigh did with the Burning Coal Theater that illustrates the point. So I'm going to stop talking now and ask for questions. Yes, sir.
First question, what, you said the US and the Philippines were not going to have the for-profit
Correct.
bail system.
Correct.
What's some of the
So my partner in crime, the guy actually who got me into this when I was retired, and when I retired, I was looking around to do something useful. He worked for the state of, his name is David Bland. He worked for the state of Kentucky back in the day. And in Kentucky, they have a powerful governor. The position is powerful. They were able to pass a constitutional amendment in Kentucky to eliminate for-profit cash bail. They still have cash bail. It's just done through the government. The government does it all. So that's what most of the states who've done reform have done. Illinois is the one in the lead, really, in many ways, and they've eliminated cash bail.
So how would that work? So just talk about Kentucky there. It's a government run. What do they do? And how does it work?
So instead of getting a book when you get arrested, say, call this private company and see if they will help you. Yeah. That if the bail amount has been set, the state, it's just a state function. So the for-profit part of it, because when profit comes into it, that's the most important thing. You're not worried about, the person or the family. So the state.
What person like say you got a $50,000 bail. What do? You put up $5,000 cash to the state?
So I actually skipped over that in the interest of time, but let me just go back to it. Let's see if I can quickly go. I'm just worried that it might be too hard to see. Yeah, here. So the statute says, right, what a judge is supposed to do, right, before they bring in a financial obligation, right? What are the options that the judge has? The judge can written promise to appear, right? So you're going to promise to appear. You can do an unsecured appearance bond, which says, I'm going to release you, and if you don't show up, then you owe that bond, right? Both of these allow people to go home. The third one says, there's another organization out here that's going to be responsible for you, right, until your trial date. And that can be a county service, right? And you actually have that in Guilford. They don't do a lot. They don't have a huge clientele, but you have the start of that. And that's one of the areas that you could talk to people about. How can we expand that service, right? With a case manager that's helping the people get what they need between the time they've been charged and the time they have to show up for their trial. So those are the kinds of alternatives. Then the fourth thing down here is a secured bond, right? And the last one is house arrest with electronic monitoring. So this is the statute. This is a North Carolina statute. And the problem is that 68% of the time they get to number 4. They're not doing it anywhere near enough. The other options. Yes, ma'am.
Statistics are great. I know that sometimes if you want to persuade people, news organizations start with a story.
Yes.
This is Bill Smith. This is what happened to Bill Smith. Can you believe this?
Right.
This is how it happened. Why it happened. This is why you should care. Again, look at all these numbers. You know, news organizations, are you aware of stories that have been published?
Yes. In fact, in our little. Sorry. So the question was, are there news organizations who have been relating stories about people who have in this situation? And there are. And across the nation, these stories have been coming out and coming out. So there is a kind of a national movement coming out about it. And actually, from my perspective, that's one of the reasons to do a local bail fund. because it's a way to get connected to the people who are actually being directly affected. Not everybody wants to publish their business, but yes, there are plenty, and we've got links to lots of stories. And the National Bail Project, actually on their website, has several examples of people and what's happening. Yes, ma'am.
When you say no bail, and today you're gonna talk about traffic misdemeanors, right? Traffic misdemeanors not affect burglars, affect
Yes,
attacks, affect
yes.
could potentially continue. What are you talking about when you say no bail? You talking about across the board?
So, right, so the question is, what happens if you eliminate bail? Is there an issue with public safety? Right? Do I have to fear because somebody who's violent's been let out? Which is, by the way, how most campaigns, especially if you're on the conservative side of the aisle,
Which I am.
good. Well, so you talk to some of that and they say, well, and the judges are very afraid. The thing that, when you ask people in the system, why does this not change? They say, well, nobody wants to. Everybody remember Willie? I think it was Willie Horton. I keep wanting to say Willie Loman. I know that's wrong. Willie Horton, the ad. Remember that ad? So as soon as somebody who's been released commits another crime, then it comes back, because these are all elected officials, right? You can come back to that. So what do? How do you ensure public safety without bail? Right? Well, first of all, bail doesn't ensure public safety, right? There are people who have $1 million bonds who walk out immediately. And if you have $1 million bond, that's probably a pretty serious crime. But if you can pay the fee, the $100,000 fee, you're out. So it doesn't really protect you from wealthy, violent perpetrators. Where does the protection come from? It has to come back to the judge. The judges are able to say, well, we've outsourced this, right? It's not us, it's the bail. So the judge can decide, and in Illinois, what they do is they have a specific hearing on detention. It actually takes their process a little longer, right? Which is one of the reasons the judges initially didn't like it, but they've come around to understand that it's a better system. But if you have a detention hearing and the evidence is sufficient for the judge to be concerned about public safety, you don't get bail, right? So so the judge, you don't have to be granted bail, especially if you're a violent criminal. And there are people, I'm sure, in county jail right now who have not been. There aren't many, but there are a few in there that say no bail.
So is
Explain that. You're saying they're just kept in prison.
I'm sorry, they're kept in jail, so they're not released, right? That should be up to the judge to decide who is released, which is why the American Bar Association doesn't like the current system, because the judge, and often this is just done with quick guidelines. The judge says, sets the bail, and then if the person's released or not, it's not up to them.
So it's either no bail or, in other words, if you go for a judge, what you're proposing is, the only two choices is you don't get bail at all, and then you just don't have that.
Right, although.
So it has to be, the fine has to be so high that you would not qualify for bail.
Right.
What you're saying.
Right. So for instance, if it's a domestic violence situation,
Those guys let out.
today they can be let out because they can make bail. But in this situation, if somebody's accused of domestic violence and they have a history of domestic violence, they don't have to be let out. But that's not the system we have. The judges don't make those decisions today. So it's a fallacy that bail is protecting us somehow, because it doesn't really. It just takes poor people off the street. It doesn't stop the violent offender who has money, unless the judge, in an exception today, very often does not allow that person. Yes, ma'am.
You're saying that all of these people that are in jail should not be there. It's costing the county so much money. What are the effects of all those people in jail that should be out?
So we're focusing, and really this answers the prior question a little bit. What are we're focusing on low-level misdemeanors. If we focus there in North Carolina, that's where we think, we were gonna go off and try to change the way bail's done. We say, let's focus on the low-level misdemeanors, right? Those people, it's not a violent, there's no public safety issue for many of them. In fact, some of them, like the failure to appear, are administrative. I think I'm getting.
I think you would have a better argument if you do one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't say no bail, because that tells people no bail across the board. Because someone like me, I can meet you on a middle ground.
Yes.
These low level misdemeanors. I can campaign for you with that. But I am not gonna get buying into blanket no bail.
Right,
It hasn't worked in other areas.
right. Well, I could come back and we can talk about Illinois.
Let's get some numbers.
Yeah.
And it's just not, you got repeat offenders, violent offenders, over and over and over, committing crimes. Yes, they are. And.
Sure, there's an extra
There's
rule.
only three brainstorm. If you have all these people, that's three too many. If it hits you, or
Right,
your mother, or your daughter.
right. So we're talking about how would we go about doing reform? So I'm not saying we should eliminate all bail. I'm saying, and there's different approaches we can take. In Illinois, they did. And we can learn from Illinois without having to do it here first. So if we can understand what they did and how they did it, then maybe we can, think about what we would do here differently.
But there aren't many people who just want to say, no bail.
Right. Well, it's a big change. It's a big change. And bail's been in our system long, and people are used to it. So anytime we
We've got to get on to.
we do. I don't want to keep you from the next slide.
Some people on Zoom have asked for the website they could go to get some of these stations.
Okay, I'm gonna put that back. My first chart had that for the people on Zoom so they can get more information. And I've got brochures in the back. And if you want, oops, there it is. So I think I might have to move this over. Yeah, I'll read it out too. So if you want more information, you can come up here with your phone, or you can go to bit.ly/NCICBRC. And that will take you to our Google folder, and there's lots of information there. And the other thing you can do is go to the North Carolina ncchurches.org and look for the cash bail web page there. There's lots of information. Okay, I think I better declare that. Thank you.
I just wanted, if you're interested in doing something, there are several nonprofits in Greensboro that are very involved with criminal justice reform. There's one called Forward Justice and Second Chance Alliance, and the Almond Connection, which is the bail fund. And there's information back there. And if you're interested, we're doing court watching to see which judges are letting people not pay their fines and fees, or there's a motion now that you cannot have to pay if you can't afford it, if you're indigent. And so we're doing court watch on that, and it's just an hour a week. That's when the court meets. So I put my email on the bottom of that if you're interested in court watching. It's very interesting. That's all. I'm putting it back there.
Thank you, everyone. This will be on the website, so you'll have access to the recording, to the folder, to the QR codes. It will all be under member resources. And thanks for everyone coming together with different opinions and being open to listening. Thank you.
My husband and I volunteered. Yeah.